So I'm Catherine Bell, and I'm with Russ Hudson. And as you know, Russ Hudson is the thought leader on the Enneagram, one of our key thought leaders on the Enneagram and how to be present. And Russ and I thought it would be super timely to do a Zoom call with everybody so that Russ can really share his wisdom in the efforts of helping people during this trying time. So with that note, and by the way, you can go to russhudson.com, enneagraminstitute.com for more information. So Russ, can you help us understand enneagrammatically what is going on right now?
Yeah, unmute. There we go. I'm unmuted now. You can hear me?
We can hear you. At first I was like, uh-oh, we can hear you. Thanks, Russ.
I had the mute on to be not noisy. Hi, everyone. Well, gee whiz, that's a big question. I think there are so many angles and elements to what's going on, so many layers, the raw biology and science of it, the sociological implications, the individual psychological implications. There's just so many aspects to it. But I think if I was going to look at what the Enneagram specifically brings to helping us with this, it would bring me back a little bit to traditional Enneagram. And by that, I mean not just talking about types, but about the meaning of the symbol. And some of you may have learned about the different laws that the Enneagram talks about, the law of 1, the law of 3, the law of 7. The law of 7 is about change. And it seems to me that what we're experiencing has a lot to do with some of the teachings around that. The idea there is that on the Enneagram symbol, you'd have to picture it, is you've got the circle, right? And then we have the triangle. And the triangle in the middle represents what are called shock points. And then the other 6 points that make that funny hexad thing, they represent process. The idea here is that in any natural ongoing process, internal or external, any developing system comes to points where a shock occurs that progresses the system onward to the next stage of development or sends it back to the drawing board. And I think it would be fair to say that what we're experiencing is a big global shock point. In the way I understand the shock point in just very pedestrian language, it just means an event that disrupts business as usual. The status quo is off the menu, right? So many different things may happen, but they aren't going to be what's been happening. Now, we have shock points in our individual lives. We have big ones. Example would be, I don't know, birth of a child will be a pretty big shock point for a lot of people. The coming into a new relationship or the end of a relationship, the passing of loved ones. We have events in our lives that knock us out of our pattern, shall we say, where we're just operating, assuming everything is the way it is. So when shocks occur, one thing that happens is some of the things that we just take for granted, the things that we just assume will always be there for us, the ways we feel entitled even, get challenged. And from what I'm hearing, and maybe you are too, I'm hearing a whole lot of that across the board. And people are responding to that in a lot of different ways. So, I think when we're in a situation like this, it's a marvelous opportunity for back to basics. Seeing through a lot of our basic assumptions. And really the Enneagram, even looking at it from the point of view of our type pattern or our type structure, is a way of seeing our assumptions, what we take as a given, and what we don't see going on in ourselves or going on in others. So for me, back to basics means back to practice and reframing in a certain way why I'm doing practice, what it's for, what it supports, let's say. I find it very interesting, and I'd be curious, if we talk a little bit, what you guys are experiencing. Weirdly, even though we're all more hunkered down now, we're all supposed to be in some kind of isolation, semi-isolation or real isolation. We're with just a few people. I'm finding that a lot of people are feeling the import of their human connection more than ever. And I'm noticing that people are really wanting to have meaningful connection and conversations during this time. So it's funny to me how, when we take things for granted, we just assume that'll always be there. But when anything messes with that, suddenly you go, oh my God, that's so important. How can I support that? Well, a couple of quick things to say. I've been on the phone a lot with some of my peers. Been talking a lot with my friend Cynthia Bourgeot. I've been talking a lot with Almas Hamid Ali. I've been talking with some of the people who do the kind of things I do and people who have mentored me. And we're all feeling like it's a time where going deep doesn't necessarily mean withdrawing. It's a very interesting idea. If the spiritual rumors are true, right? The rumor is you and I are connected, even as we're here staring at electronic devices and separated by space, physical space. There's another way in which we can experience being actually closer. I was in a retreat all this last week with Almas and the group that I've been working with for some, 20, 30 years. And we wondered whether we'd be able to have a gathering and be able to do it through Zoom, which is what we did. And it was amazing how much we could feel each other and get plugged in. So what I want to do for myself, and what I'm suggesting is maybe a good idea, is how developing presence, connecting with my centers, and I'm guessing that you know what the centers are, the belly, the heart, and the head. Not as concepts, but actual direct experience of them. Feeling my body in the here and now, being with my heart in the here and now, being with my mind in the here and now, is not a disconnect from other people. We often think of it that way. And we even use that kind of language, let's all go within, and then we kind of hear it as a kind of way of getting away from everybody and everything. But I want to suggest that this might be a time where going within is the way we reconnect. Like if I'm here talking with you now and I go within and you're there listening and you're in whatever space you're in, but we drop in, there's this other level by which we are in connection with each other. And that's going to come in mighty handy during this time. Really, the studying the Enneagram type, a lot of it, let's just say, until further notice, is about seeing what distracts us from doing that. What kind of little narrative do I get myself wrapped up in that and that closes me off to this more sensitive, deeper layer of myself where I can feel more of a communion with other people. And to kind of get that, as crazy as it looks out there, there's a lot of people like us. There's a lot of people across this world right now who are really, with all their heart and soul, seeking some other level of connection and communication. And we're all trying to feel our way forward. So I think my basic suggestion is not earth-shaking or shocking. It's like, here's a great and wonderful time to practice, to take advantage of the fact that some of the usual distractions are kind of off the menu for a little while, and to really see what it means to connect, even though some of the usual modalities through which we connect are not available right now. So I just want to invite us, as we're sitting here for a moment before we do any other chatting, to just see what that would mean right now. See if we can actually do that. Like, I always, as my students will know, I always start with sensing the body and the breath, just as a way of getting me more congruent with the immediacy of my experience. That, by the way, is also a great steadying place when our minds are swirling with anxiety. You don't have to be a 6 to have anxiety at these times. But you know, our minds can get into revs and thinking all kind of weird thoughts. To have this counterweight of breath and sensation is such a help. Helps to steady my consciousness. So really breathing. Feeling my feet on the ground. Feel myself sitting in whatever I'm sitting on. Chair, couch, floor. And notice there's like a wave that comes up from within. If I really do that, it helps, as I said, just stabilize my awareness. And I can do that, keep doing it. It will continue to have that effect. It's not a one-shot deal. And then if I'm really doing that, then the heart's going to come more online. And that can be as simple as just being nice to myself for a few minutes. Being gentle. There's a lot of harshness and difficulty in this world right now. But there's also a lot of kindness. There's a lot of people who are feeling an upwelling of compassion and trying to see what they can do. But I tend to believe that that quality can begin right here with me, within myself, because the kindness isn't exactly directional. If I'm in touch with that quality of heart, it's more touching into everything. And this is where we can feel some of our defenses and edginess and so forth. But rather than reject that, we meet it with the softness, the kindness. We give those scared parts of us some holding. As if a good parent came home to find the kids freaking out. Well, what might we do? And then to just notice that as I'm doing that, my mind gets less agitated. I can think more clearly, can listen better. If I had to speak, I could speak with a greater alignment with what I'm actually wanting to be and say. Yeah. And as I'm allowing all of this, I can see if I can actually feel the field, so to speak, of all of us doing this at the same time and supporting each other by doing this. We don't even have to have exactly an intention, I'm going to support people. Just the quality of our presence, just our landing is already shifting the field that we're participating in. And I invite us to consider that perhaps this soft wave that is being generated might go beyond this group. And maybe there's a lot of other people in the world who are doing their best to generate another kind of energy for our humanity at this time. This already can make a difference. And to just notice what arises in my heart as I touch these elements of my experience. What do I feel? Yeah, thank you. Feels a little different now, doesn't it? Does for me. I hope it does for you. You know, I'm often wanting people to get that while I completely understand the formal notion of meditating, there's a way in which when I think I'm going to meditate, it sort of structures it in a way that limits the possibilities of what that actually is. One of my teachers used to say, and she used to crack me up, she'd say, okay, we're going to not meditate now. And by that, what she was saying is, instead of trying to do something, we're just going to relax and be here and getting in touch with whatever's happening. We weren't assuming a posture, so to speak. We were checking out the postures we were already assuming without realizing it, which is a little bit more what the Enneagram's about. And just the nice thing about that is that I can do that all through the day whenever I remember, and people won't even notice. They won't think I'm weird. They won't think I'm not going to emit some green light or something. They'll just notice I'm more chill and sensible and nicer. So that could be a good starting place. And I think all the Enneagram work then is looking at what we're doing instead of that. So I've chatted plenty, I think, on just the basics. So are there questions or anything, Catherine, that you want to get into in this particular time we have?
We're going to be talking on Wednesday about the different type reactions. And then on Friday, we're going to talk about the instinctual reactions to this. I'll share a personal story. I had a complete meltdown last week. And Russ, I just sat and cried and cried and cried. And it was simply because I was forward projecting. My emotions were forward, my thinking was forward, everything was forward. Even physically, I felt forward. What suggestions would you have for everybody and anybody at this time to really stay grounded in presence, aside from the obvious great examples you've just listed?
Well, different types have different entryways into that. I think they all come back to, in one way or another, breath and sensation, as I was saying, but also just reconnecting with where I am. with the environment that I find myself in, which is not the same as what my mind may be concocting, as you were just saying. Um, you know, for example, before I used to say, notice the beauty in the environment. You know, you could just go around. Ones could notice that there is a kind of order and intelligence and goodness that's already here if I open to it. Twos could notice that there's some tenderness and holding going on that I'm not in charge of. It's just happening. And it's like, wow. Then the patterns can relax a little bit because they're not trying to save the world on their own, right? The three, it's a little bit more feeling my the preciousness of the moment, of my life, of being here, of being me, of being on this journey. And then I'm not like caught up in that hypnosis of being just a function of something getting from here to there and doing what needs to be done from here to there, which is how most of us live. But to just actually stop and appreciate my existence and feel the gift that it is, right? You know, I was in the hospital for a heart problem in Paris about 6 months ago. I got a couple of stents put in. They saved my life. And even when I was laying there in the hospital with all the tubes and everything plugged in, I really had that sense of the extraordinary journey I'm on and the preciousness of everything. You know, it's not a function of whether things are, quote, going my way or not. It's a deeper sense. But presence, what I'm saying here is that each type, presence also manifests as what we're actually looking for. It's you know what we're seeking, and we're looking at in all the wrong places. You know, so the four, I already said, there's beauty in me and around me right now. There's beauty and amazing, profound, resonant experience right now. And if I'm not experiencing that, perhaps I need to just drop in a little more. The five, it's like I don't have to work to understand this. The lucidity of natural consciousness starts opening up, and it's more like the world comes to reveal itself to me. Reality starts to tell me its secrets as I become more relaxed and present, perceptive. The six is more. I always love this one. It's like I feel the support of the moment. That right now I'm supported way more than I can imagine. Like I've said, it's you can experience it as if the whole universe is conspiring to produce you in this moment. And you suddenly realize, oh my God, everything, you know, even atoms are getting together so I can be here and experience this moment. And it isn't like a pep talk. It isn't like trying to psych yourself into something. It's just as I relax and perceive things, the presence itself feels like it's got me. It's got my back. I'm being carried through this. And there's a deeper intelligence that's arising within me that knows and trusts how to get to the next moment, the next moment, the next moment. And that would deal in part with what you were talking about, Catherine, that otherwise our minds are going, when we're scared, our minds go crazy trying to head off the bad guys at the past. And we can understand why we do that, of course, but there's another more trustworthy intelligence in me that is way better at handling that stuff and responding to what's actually needed. Otherwise, you know, it's weird. You know, I was thinking the issue that we have with this virus is not so much that it's more deadly than other viruses or illnesses that we've had. It's not. The issue is that it's new. Humanity hasn't encountered it before, so we don't have many people have no immunity to it. And the fact that it's hitting like a wave and hitting many people at the same time. So when it's hitting all these different people at the same time, of course, it overwhelms our healthcare system, which frankly has not always received the support it's needed to do its job. But we suddenly, this influx of all these people, there's not enough medical resources to handle it. That's the danger. But we do the same thing in ourselves psychologically. We overwhelm ourselves by trying to load on more stuff than our system can assimilate. And that's a habit. That's something I can see myself doing. I say, ooh, I'm doing that thing. Breathe. And there's some beauty in, this is where we get a little zen. We get a little monastic. We just deal with one thing at a time and we get through. Many of us are relearning that right now, because our usual life rhythms have been so disrupted. So I want to just also the 7.
Russ, can we just pause for a second? We have a question from Carolina. And Carolina, I'm wondering if you could unmute and ask your question, please.
Oh,
Yeah.
sure.
Hi, this is Carolina.
Hi, Carolina.
My question is, I like what you're offering as far as what the things we can, each of them, any numbers should start noticing to come back to presence. But I think you said something about, hey, we don't need to convince ourselves, right? Like, it's not that we're trying to convince ourselves that everything is okay.
Yeah.
In that line, I had a person who was very scared. She's going to the hospital because she's having really a moment where she's having coughing, pain. So in moments like that, I mean, I think for me right now, as difficult, as easy as it is, I can't even convince myself and presence myself, move and breathe, and I'm fine because I'm in a safe.
Yeah.
But if I'm really feeling pain, I feel like I'm going to hospital, then it becomes a little more real, and it's still the invitation to look for what's beautiful in a hospital, and as I'm going through that pain.
Yeah, that's what I had to do when I was having my heart event. And I was in another country. I was in France. And what it is, usually when we are in ego states, we're split between what we think is the good side and what we think is the bad side. So here's all this fear, and we don't want to have fear. So we try to do pep talks or talk ourselves out of it or zone out or dissociate or something to get away from the fear. And that's understandable, but it doesn't work, as most of us know. I tell you a very vulnerable story. When I was there in France, I had a heart attack was coming, and I could tell. So I had to get up in the middle of the night in my hotel. It was, 3:30 in the morning, something like that. I had to get dressed. I went downstairs. I could speak enough French. They make them understand what's going on. And they got me a taxi that took me to the hospital. And hospital was about 4 or 5 miles away. I got there, got out. The guy left me off there. He said, that's the gate into the hospital. I got into the gate. On the other side of the gate was a long uphill driveway. And here I am on the verge of a heart attack with a big driveway to walk up, 4 o'clock in the morning, no one around. So what could I do? I could freak out. I could try to make myself feel better. I used exactly what I said. I used the support of the moment. I said, whatever may happen, this presence is with me right now, and I am with me right now. And I made every little slow step along the way. I called my sister, who happened to be awake, and told her what's going on. And I said, look, if I stop talking or you don't hear me, it means I collapsed, and please contact the authorities. But that was my mind being clear, just thinking of what I could do. I got to it's not over yet. I got to the top of the driveway. Long process. Get there. The door is locked, closed. There's no one there. At that moment, I really thought, well, this might be the end of the movie. I looked around me. It was cold. It was dark. There was no one there. My sister's on the phone, but she's thousands of miles away. And I didn't know what else to do. I could go back down the ramp and start looking, but this hospital was gigantic. And I could maybe walk, a kilometer trying to find there was nothing to be done. So I didn't know what to do. I got very quiet. I did exactly what I was saying. I felt that inner support again. And I realized the only thing I can do is find a comfortable place to sit near the entrance and to just practice, to just do my conscious breathing, sense everything I was just talking about, because that would help my heart stay calmer and help my system be healthier. If I'm just running all these emotions and reactions, it's going to make it worse, right? So if I could keep myself calm and relaxed, that will help me until somebody comes. And B, if that was my time, I would rather go out that way. You see? And so it was kind of clarity. There was no spiritual sentimentality. It was very stark, but very clear. And so I went and found a place to sit down. I was going to sit down, and a janitor appeared inside the hospital just at that moment. And I waved at him, and I called out to him in French, and he disappeared at first, so I thought I scared him. But he came back with keys, and he opened the front door, and he came out and talked with me. And then he guided me. I put my hands on his shoulder, and he walked me down the ramp and around the corner to the emergency exit. And then I spent, again, the next 10 to 12 hours on a gurney in the emergency room in terrible pain, feeling like my whole body hurt, all these wires and things in me. I couldn't move. All I could do at that moment was exactly what I just suggested. And so I did. And all I had at that point was that presence, was that grace, and just taking in the kindness of the nurses. And by the way, the nurses noticed I was noticing. Taking in the amazing fact that they had these machines to help me. Taking in the fact that even if this was the end of my life, I was feeling gratitude. And the alternative would have been to just be there freaking out and twisting and reacting to all of it. And that would have been the normal thing, right? So this isn't like, as I said, it's not a pep talk, and it takes practice. And I tell people all the time, you have to practice when it's easy, so it will be there for me when it's hard. So if I'm not in a crisis, if I get used to just connecting with life in the way I've been saying, connecting with grace in the way I've been saying, then when I'm scared, I have some resources inside so that I can call on that part of me. I can call on that connection, and it will really help me. But I'm saying all of us can be doing that with each other, for each other. Also, if we have loved ones who are freaking out, like this lady you were saying, or people that we work with, our quality of groundedness, contact, sensitivity, people, whether or not they understand it, they feel that. And it helps them. It helps them trust. And I bet you've had healthcare workers or other people who've helped you in your life who had that quality. And when somebody's with you like that, it helps you trust the process, you see? So that's what I'm saying. It's like, it's not fear or trying to talk myself out of the fear. It's another pathway that holds the fear, that relates to it, is present with the fears and doubts, and also aware that there's something else at work here, both at the same time.
Thank you. And I thank you for mentioning about if we can be that for ourselves, then we can be that for others. Because I think that is huge
Yes.
now. Thank you.
I don't know, as I was saying, I find that when I experience compassion, kindness, or love, they're not directed at just one person or thing. It's more like that quality of me opens up. And maybe I see like a little dog or something that makes me feel kindness, right? But then if I'm feeling that kindness, it's not just about the little dog. If I actually notice, it's more like that part of me wakes up again. And it's toward everyone, including me.
Yeah.
So we're trying to wake up that part of us again.
I like what you just said about the dog, because I feel like I've seen it with a lot of my friends that are in healing, or they get sent and they see you suffering, or they think you're suffering, and they're like, let me give you this piece because you need it. So it's very different quality of me feeling blissful and let me pass it on you because you need it, versus I am there and I'm just there and you're in there with that.
Yeah, I have friends, and you can think about this yourself. I have some friends right now are going through big difficulties, friends who are dealing with this illness, friends who are dealing with cancer and this illness being around, friends who are dealing with all kind of life situations. And don't you notice that just as you were just saying, Carolina, when I'm in a bad situation, I don't want somebody coming in there trying to fix me. It always feels weird. I can always tell they're doing that more for themselves than they are for me. They're trying to make themselves feel better about it. And in those moments, I'm very forgiving about it. It's just more like human nature. Sometimes when we're sick or in trouble, it opens our eyes to see the world more honestly. And I find that when people just know how to just be with me in a real way, they're just there. That's the gift. That's the lusciousness. They're not trying to give me some little new age spiritual platitude to make me feel better. They're there. Some of the nurses I had in Paris were magnificent that way. And the doctors were too. They were laughing. We were joking around in the operating room. They were great.
Now, Russ, we are at time, and I know the other types will feel radically ripped off if you don't go through them.
Don't say the other types. Okay, I better do that. I don't want to get wrath directed at me. Good Lord. Yeah. So, okay, where was I did 6, right? So 7. This comes really nicely out of what Carolina and I were just talking about. There is a kind of inextinguishable positivity and light that's always here. And as an Enneagram 5, I was very skeptical about that. I thought, oh God, that's just new age nonsense. That's somebody making up some religious tomfoolery. I didn't believe it, but I was wrong. But it doesn't come through trying to cheer ourselves up. It doesn't come from distracting ourselves. It doesn't come from putting our mind on something else. All the things that we as egos learn to do. And those aren't bad things. They're just not going to work when the real, what has hit the fan. So when we relax, we feel this light, and we feel this, it's almost like everything you're experiencing is like a messenger from the light. Everything is coming to you and reassuring you and saying, it's all amazing. It's all going to be okay. And even if this is the end of my life, it's going to be okay. It's a place beyond fear. And we've come to it by this kind of relaxing and being with where we are now. And the other thing I'd say is that very positivity is what helps us so much with our difficult feelings. It's not trying to get away from them. This is part of the magic that comes up from within that holds and helps us heal and move through our difficult feelings. And heaven knows in times like this, we're going to have difficult feelings. And it's okay. It's part of being a human being. but we learn to access these deeper resources that support us in metabolizing those difficult emotions as they come up. We don't have to make them up, that's for sure. So point 8, really it's feeling, I'm trying to find the right language for it. I can feel it and then I have to translate it to words. It's like feeling like I'm part of life. That life, the life force, life, the energy of earth, the consciousness of life is happening through me, around me. I'm part of it. It will go on after me. But that right now I'm fully participating in life, and life is intelligent. Life knows what to do. Life is bigger and can handle these situations. And that gives me a very natural confidence. It's related to the 6 in that these two together, particularly, they produce a kind of trust, a unshakable quality. We're less pushed around by our emotions and our reactions. It's like we found this more solid, living ground in ourselves, which isn't something cold and dead. It's alive and pulsing, but very strong, like a tree. Like strong like a tree is strong. And that's going to get us through a lot. And it just brings more of a sense of delight too. Again, delight can be in the direction of wonder, appreciation. All of these things are different forms of appreciating the life we're given, even when from one perspective we could think it's kind of shitty right now. That's one valid view. It's not to dismiss that. But when you have that and the appreciation at the same time, something creative and new can arise. So the last but not least, we have the gorgeous point 9. And it's related to what I just said in the 8, but here the emphasis more like feeling reconnected with everything. Now I know all my 9s always tell me how much they like that feeling of being connected. It's not just a mergy I thou thing. It's like feeling like part of the whole cosmos. And in a weird way, that when I feel this, boy, this brings my sort of sense of spiritual humility so quickly. I really want to bow to the universe when I feel it. Like I'm a very particular expression of everything coming together right here. And it isn't just, again, a nice new age, paste over of the fact that I feel depressed or down or angry or something. It's like even those parts of me are part of the whole thing. And feeling, again, related to the 8, it's like I'm part of this living tapestry. And as I look around the room that I'm in, or I'm looking at this computer screen that has images of your cute faces out there, it's just this whole unity of experience that all spiritual tradition is pointing to is actually here as a felt thing, not as a philosophical gloss, not as a rumor. I relax and come back into myself. That becomes more and more my experience. And that is tremendously healing and stabilizing. And again, even if we were in our last moments, such perceptions would be so supportive and helpful and true. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Russ. It's amazing to me. It's like every time you speak, I see a roadmap, and that roadmap is how do we be more truly alive and here in the moment. And just thank you so much for giving your time to everybody today. I know.
My pleasure. Yeah, I just say let's use this strange new land that we're in as a way to not take things for granted. Right? that's, I think, one of the best things that can come out of this time. This is going to end at some point. Who knows when or where it will. And if we've done some good incubating during this time, when we emerge from it, there's a little chance we might be able to inject something precious into this world, something that will actually help us go in a better direction as we move forward. So thank you, everybody.
On that note, we'll be back on Wednesday. So, yeah. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for coming by.
Thank you, Russ. Thank you, Catherine.
Oh, thank
Bye.
you. Thank you. Hi,
Thank you so
Stefan.
much, Russ. Thank you, everybody. Thank you,
Oh, hi,
Catherine.
Ahmad. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right.
Really
Stay
nice.
Stay safe, everybody.
We got the whole Egyptian contingent.
Thank you, everyone.
Very nice.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you,
Bye.
Ross. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.